Today's guest is someone who sits at the intersection of law, education, wellbeing and social responsibility, a voice Australia needs right now. Adair Donaldson is a lawyer, educator and advocate who has spent decades working with young people, parents, sporting organisations and schools across the nation. Through his educational programs, Adair tackles some of the most important and often uncomfortable topics facing families today: consent, digital behaviour, accountability, risk, responsibility, and the law. From social media pitfalls to alcohol-fueled environments, from harassment and consent to reputation and life choices, Adair's work aims to shift the conversation from judgment to education, from shame to growth, from silence to informed dialogue.
Rose, that's not controversial. Rose, every school, every employer in the land has a code of conduct. And the code of conduct for a school says your behaviour, both during and outside of school hours, will not be inconsistent with the school's values. In a workforce, it talks about your conduct, both during and outside of work hours, will not bring the employer into disrepute. So again, we're preparing children for life after school.
Yeah. He joins us today to explore how parents can better understand the world their kids are growing up in and how we can build the social literacy needed for safer, more resilient and more respectful young Australians. I'm Rose Garofano, and over the years of being an educator and connector, I've had the privilege of talking with a vast array of incredible individuals who inspire and create meaningful impact across the globe through their words and actions. I've often thought about how amazing it would be to sit down and have a deeper conversation with these extraordinary people. I've learned so much from them, and I believe their stories are the ones everyone should hear. UThink is my opportunity to engage with these remarkable people, to bring out the best in them. My hope is that through these conversations, we can all be inspired to achieve our own greatness and make meaningful impact in our world. Welcome, Adair. This is my... I think it's my 20th podcast for the year.
Wow.
And I am so privileged to have your voice on UThink because...
Rose, I'm so happy to be here.
I have always wanted to interview, and this is why UThink exists, people who have a passion for change and making an impact. And that's the whole purpose and premise of this podcast, to educate, but to educate from the perspective of people who are trying to have the greatest impact in the areas of greatest need. And we've actually met each other a few years ago. We were working on a very high sort of profile case.
Yeah, that's right, Rose.
And it was emotional, and I know how much you cared for that particular person. And I always could hear in your voice this advocacy, and I think that's important. Of course, then following you on LinkedIn, I've seen how you've emerged from a very lawyer-based position and you're educating and advocating for the voices that need to be heard.
Yeah, thanks, Rose. Yep.
But you tell your story. So, Adair, how did you get to where you are today?
Rose, so as you just mentioned there, I am a lawyer. So
we won't hold that against you.
I know, Rose. So I've had 28 years looking after people and dealing with people that have survived trauma. And what happened was back in 2007, there I was based in regional Queensland, and I was seeing young lives and families whose lives were either being touched or smashed as a result of involvement with alcohol, drugs, sex, fights, motor vehicles, and now we can add in mobile phones, social media, and now AI image-based abuse.
Oh yeah, they call them deep fakes, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, so back in 2007, no one was even thinking about that. But what I was seeing and what drove me into action was the then federal government. They came along, they spent $52 million on a campaign, and all it was designed to do was to get parents talking to their kids about illicit substances. $52 million. And it was a green pamphlet that went into every person's letterbox. Now, I'm not sure you remember that, but
no.
Well, I can tell you when I did a survey around, it went straight into the bin. It didn't spark those conversations, but we've gone and spent $52 million. Yeah. So what I did was I got a bit carried away. So I approached a group of teachers, social workers, police officers, and I pitched an idea. And the idea was that rather than coming along and preaching to people about what they should and shouldn't be doing, why aren't we showing real case scenarios and then encouraging people to come up with the solutions themselves? Now, Rose, I must have done an okay selling job because all of a sudden they got behind me and I then got carried away and I became a movie maker. And so this is 2007. I went out and I created resources. Back then, what I was looking at, and I suppose I've always had the ability to pick where the next big issue is going to be.
Yeah.
So back in 2007, we were talking about consent. So
wow,
consent,
so we've been talking about it for a long time.
a long time.
But it really hasn't quite landed.
Well, we're getting there. We've come a long way, Rose. The other issues I was talking about then was with respect to mobile phones and driving, inattention.
Yes.
We're talking about alcohol, fuel, violence. We're talking about using illicit substances and then the impact that it could have in the work environment. So all really topical issues. So I created this resource. I remember we had the first ever presentation of it. It was to around 1,500 school leavers in Toowoomba, which is my hometown in Queensland. And at the time, I thought I was Jeffrey Robinson, the hypothetical. So I had this team of experts up on stage and I'd show the scenario and then I'd get these experts. So there you had a coroner there, we had emergency doctors. Here's a parent, I can see you leaning in and saying, this is fascinating. Get all that back. I thought it was fascinating too. And we got their feedback. And then at the end of the day, what happened was I got the feedback from the teachers. The teachers said, that was brilliant. It was just the way that you showed it, the way that you brought the experts. And I was feeling pretty good about myself. And then we got the feedback from the school leavers. Their feedback was, hey, love the scenarios, love the videos, but too many old people talking. Rose, I was 37. Okay, so from a point of view, I thought, far out, this is brutal. But as chance would have it, the next day I got a desperate call from a principal from one of the more challenging schools in our area. And he gave me a call and said, far out, I stuffed up the date. I've got 250 school leavers here. Can you come and present? So I arrived there and it was like something out of that TV show, Thank God You're Here. I arrived there and he said, listen, I've got 250 school leavers behind that door. We've given you 40 minutes. We doubt whether you last 20. In you go. Rose, I went into that room and all I did was show the scenarios and then start a conversation and having an authentic conversation about these issues and what we were doing. And in that co-ed environment, we started to get people talking about these issues. It was full on, it was frank, it was authentic, but they lent in. So 80 minutes later, we had to pull up stumps, and that's where it started. And Rose, if I have a look at, that was 2007, where we are to date, the approach that I've always taken has been keeping it real, keeping it authentic, and concentrating on what my specialty is, and that is looking at legal consequences. Because if you come along and you have a look at what all the research is saying, invariably young people are saying, don't treat us as a problem to be solved, treat us as a solution.
Yeah, or ask us to help come to the solution.
Yeah, and if you engage with them, and if you, I get so frustrated, particularly when we're dealing with young people, that invariably we're pussyfooting around these issues. And we're thinking, well, you can't say that to them, you can't have these full, frank conversations. Well, we should be having full, frank conversations and we should be showing them real case scenarios and then challenging them to come up with the solutions.
Well, we know 100% that children as young as 5 and 6 and 7, when they get access to the internet, are exposed to sites that we would not want them to be exposed to. So I actually think having frank and honest conversations with children as they're developing is critical because they are seeing things that need to be unpacked. If we don't unpack them, they are left with misunderstandings about what is right and wrong, sexual relationships, substances, even just in terms of identity. I think that what's happening is our parent voices have gone quiet in some ways because maybe we don't know how to address the issues ourselves, or we're scared to. We don't know what our children are going to say to us. I think it's hard.
Yeah, so Rose, I come back to when I first started in this space. when I originally said, well, I'll take it down to grade 11. So around about 16, 17, 18, that's when I'll be addressing it. And then another school came to me and they said, hey, can you bring it to 10? I said, okay, I'll do 10. And then so we go back to, say, 5, 6 years ago, then I'm getting schools that are approaching me saying, can you do 9s for us? And then most recently, it was year 8s, and then I see that I've got a request to do year 7 now as well.
Yeah. You would taper that, wouldn't
Oh,
you?
it's tapered,
but you can see the need for early
100%,
intervention.
100%. You know, and let's not forget that what schools are doing. The schools, from the very first day that they walk into a senior school, what that school is doing is preparing them for the very last day that they walk out.
Correct.
And the reason why in that school it will have its rules, its policies, those rules and policies are based on what they're going to be expected of them when they walk out into a university, when they walk out into a job. We're preparing you for them. Correct. So it is it's vital that when they walk into that school that we start preparing them for life with rules.
Yeah.
And again, I come back to what my lane is. My lane is getting people in a really constructive and an informative way. Particularly, there's a fair bit of humour in the way that we approach it, but again, age appropriate, looking at these issues. So, for instance, if we were starting with year 7s and year 8s, we'd actually talk to them about why do we have rules, and then we have a look at how do we break this down. And then the way that I do it is I bring it back to 3 words. One is going to be respect, one's going to be responsibility, and one's going to be reputation. And if you have a look at all of our rules, all of our policies, they can come back to those 3 words.
100%.
Respect, responsibility, and reputation. So when we talk about responsibility, what we want people to be doing from a very young age is taking responsibility for their own actions. They own the good, they own the bad. And let's not forget that as a young person, as a child, they are going to make mistakes.
100%. So this would be a good time to actually now direct it into, I think, where our parents lie in this narrative, because as a school teacher for over 30 years, I have witnessed firsthand how schools take this seriously. In amongst a very crowded curriculum, schools do things such as what we call a pastoral care period, where we might have teachers unpack concepts that are age appropriate. For year 7 and 8, it's bullying, and starting to look at how do we tell someone older than us or somebody in authority that we might be vulnerable. In 9 and 10, it's starting to talk about their identities as males or females, the emerging puberty, their sexual relations, even things such as, drinking, driving, because they're starting to get into that age. And then, of course, 11 and 12, it goes more serious. We have a look at careers. But where we not fail as a school, but where we seem to really find maybe a disjunct or a lack of support is from the parent voice.
Hey, Rose, let's talk about this. So first of all, in relation to teaching, I think it's one of the last of the noble professions. If I have a look at what our teachers are facing on the front line and the way that they dedicate their working careers to be able to support the futures of our young people.
And it's hard. It's a hard, vocation, because they're humans and they're developing.
Rose, our teachers are the backbone. They are, one of the greatest things that I get to do is to work with teachers and get to work with schools. But what that has allowed me to do is get a real appreciation for what is happening on the front line. And where we are not supporting our teachers is we are not giving them enough power to not only be educating the children coming through about expectations, but also getting them to the ability to connect with the parents. 100%. And what I mean by that is this. So first of all, what we've seen over the years is that whenever there is a societal issue, invariably the way that we're going to fix it is we're going to put it back on the school. I'll give you an example. So when there was issues with respect to violence, all right, we're going to put it back on the school, and the school can now educate with respect to violence what is acceptable. If we've got an issue with respect to alcohol or drugs, we're going to put it back on the school, and you can put that into the curriculum. If we're going to have issues with respect to consent and respectful relationship, we're going to put it back on.
Well, we know that
If we're going to have issues with respect to gender, we're going to put it back. We're going to start. If there's most recently, vapes, we're going to put it there. Illicit drugs, you're going to teach that. If it's going to be the most recent one that I saw, bullying, harassment, that's fully in there. If it's going to be issues with respect to the use of mobile phones, what you can and can't do, social media, we're now going to put it back onto the schools to be educating in relation to that. And the most recent one that I saw was we are now going to put it back onto schools to teach porn literacy.
Oh. I know.
Rose,
I remember that when consent came in about 5 years ago, in terms of the government, again, invested millions and millions of dollars on a resource that the schools were supposed to implement. None of it was done in terms of the support of teachers, educating teachers on how to deal with it as well. The resource was going to just be given to schools, and we had to discern that information and figure out how to implement it. That's a tough topic to teach.
But teachers didn't sign up for that.
No, and more importantly, what about the resource being available to parents?
Well, Rose, I hear you, and I have listened, and we'll talk later on about what I'm doing to support teachers. But let's bring it back to the parents again, okay? So I can tell you that if we I can go into a school and I can have the most incredible day with the student. We can do sessions throughout the day. It's going to be engaging. It's going to be fun. It is going to be talking about and breaking down these really serious issues into snips of information that they can understand and they can take away. That school can then put on a session for parents in the evening. Now, that session is going to be it's going to be entertaining. It's going to be thought-provoking. It's going to be all those sorts of things. And it's going to be very similar. It's going to be based on the work that I've done with the NRL. So I can tell you that fathers are going to be interested in it as well. But when we put that session on, do you know how many, generally speaking, if it's a school, a large school, we'll probably get, 40 parents turning up.
Yeah.
And the 40 parents, God bless them, okay, the 40 parents that do turn up aren't actually the parents that we want. All right, because invariably they're the parents that are already doing the right thing that are there. Now, I contrast that if you were to come along and if you were to put on a session in relation to careers and you were talking about the best study techniques and how that child's going to get the best ATAR or get the best career, you'll pack that venue out because the parents will turn up, they're paying this enormous fees to make sure that their child is going to get
the best option.
The best option. However, what I know, if one of their children stuff up with respect to a breach of a code of conduct, or whether it's going to be a social media issue, whether it's going to be sexual harassment, whether it's going to be bullying and harassment, whether it's going to be a gender violence issue, whether it's going to be AI image-based abuse, any of one of those issues, it is going to have a significant impact on their future careers.
100%.
And if they don't learn that at school, by the way, then they go on to university, then they make the mistake, then there is going to be even more significant consequences, or alternatively they get into the workplace and then they do an act of sexual harassment, they send around an inappropriate image, those sorts of things, then the consequences are very, very real. And it doesn't matter what ATAR you get. It does not, but how do we get the parents showing up?
And I would actually agree with you 100%, because as I said, I would run those parent sessions at the school and want the parents to come into what I would say bridging, courses. If we do this with the kids, we'd like you to hear the adult version of that so that we can work together. And the numbers were always low. And lots of parents would say to me, we're very busy, we're very tired. But if you said it right, if we run a session that's about, subject selection and careers, they're all there. Or if it's a graduation, they make the time. So they're prepared to make the time for what they believe in. But I'm worried about the fact that they don't value, or maybe they just don't believe it's their responsibility. And that's the part that I want to use this podcast to focus on, Rose, is that as a parent, we have to be a parent. So my famous line as a teacher, when I used to stand up, my old boss used to say to me, I don't know if this is appropriate, but I would say to them, if you were to look at your child's birth certificate, next to your name, what's the title? It says parent. And a large speaker, I would say that. It doesn't say friend, it doesn't say buddy, it doesn't say, footy player, colleague. It says parent. So there comes with that a sense of responsibility. And I don't want to lecture to you, but I want you to walk out of the room knowing I'm expecting you to be that person for your child. So when I talk to you about your child, under all circumstances, I want you to be that child's parent. And some people got offended. Oh, you don't lecture at me, Rose, and you're a little bit condescending when you say it. No, because unfortunately, Adair, when I was a parent of a child who was growing up, there were times where I would have to go and drop him off at a party or something, and these parents were allowing the kids to have alcohol under the ages of 18, even down to the ages of 15 and 16. And I would knock on the door, and my poor old son, who hates me referencing him in this podcast, by the way, just to premise that, but I'd knock on the door and say, hi, and they'd say, hi. And I'd say, if there's alcohol here, what have you done to ensure that the children under 18 are not going to be exposed, possibly get access to it? Shock, horror on these parents' faces. Because if my son is given alcohol, I have not consented to that happening, and I will report you as being an inappropriate adult.
Yep.
Not popular amongst the parents, let me tell you.
No, I can imagine.
But next to my name on my son's birth certificate, it says parent.
Yep. Okay, so let's break. There's so many issues where we can go here. Can I tell you the first one that springs to mind? Because how are we going to connect with parents? I remember doing a session with the Gold Coast Titans, and I get a call from a teacher down at Miami State High School who was in charge of their development squads. And she gave me a call and said, can you come and deliver a session for our players? And I said, listen, no problem at all. What she didn't say to me was, we've invited the parents as well.
Great.
So I arrived down there and I walk into this auditorium. I'm expecting to see, 30 to 50 young men and young women, which are in their development squads. I walk into this room, it's at a auditorium of around about 1,500 capacity, and it's full. I'm thinking, you've got all these parents here. I'm thinking to myself, goodness gracious, there must be something else on after this, all right? And I said to her, hey, what's going on here? And she said, it's for you. But how did you get everybody along? And she said, well, we figure that our players have got just as much chance of losing their careers off the field than on it. These parents will travel hours to make sure that their child is going to get the best opportunity athletic-wise.
Yeah.
All right. However, what they need to appreciate is if they aren't parenting, if they aren't managing this side of it, that all amounts to naught. So we said, if you want to learn about the risks that your child has, you get along tonight. And they all engaged. They were the parents that wanted Rose.
Yeah, 100%.
They were the parents.
We want every parent to be able to come and fill the gap. We know that parents don't have the same access. As a teacher, I made assumptions that they would know things. They don't. As an educator, I, read widely and know of things. So it makes sense to me, to be informed. But not all parents have the same time or ability to invest in that, getting that important information, or they just don't know how to.
So then you raised another issue, which is again dealing with parents as well, and about issues, how do we have these conversations about alcohol? Rose, you'll appreciate that my resource is not a moral-based resource. What I do is I stick purely to the law. And when it comes to alcohol, all right, it is every parent's choice if, how, when they're going to introduce their children to alcohol. And if we look at statistic-wise, that whilst children will know that it is illegal for them to purchase alcohol, the law actually allows minors to consume alcohol on private premises so long as there is parental supervision.
All right. I didn't know that, but I was that vigilante mother that said, don't allow my son to have alcohol.
No, but that is certainly that's what the law is in Queensland, so long as there is parent supervision, someone there.
Yep.
Now, obviously, you may be thinking, geez, that's, wow, not sure about that. Okay, but let's think about this. What that means is that every parent that says, I'm going to allow my child to drink alcohol, they're taking responsibility for whatever happens. All right, so if there is a party, okay, and if something goes wrong, and if someone falls into a fire pit, or if there is a sexual assault, or if there is something that happens there, the person that is hosting that party can be held liable in relation to it.
And we know that happens.
100%. Okay. So then we come back and we say, well, how on earth do we start having these conversations and being an adult, being a parent? And Rose, my wife and I, we're the very proud parents of 4 beautiful young men. They're now, our youngest is now 20, but the eldest, who are twins, they turned 18 the last day of their exam. You know what they said to us? We'd have a party. Okay. I'm thinking, how far out? Okay, all right. So we've got to do this the right way, because I've said, boys, I'm going to go through, do everything properly, and part of that is registering with the police.
I did that myself. My son also turned 18 at the end of his Year 12 year, and same sort of thing. His friends had turned 18 earlier in the year and were allowed to drink, but he was very good. In this relationship, honesty is the key to building trust with a child. And I said to him, when you're of age, you can make those decisions, but because you're not of age, I have to make them for you. And you will get your time, as with everybody else.
Well, Rose, can you imagine if we hosted a party and that party went south? My career would be down the toilet. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm saying to the boys, this is what I've got to do. And they said, Dad, it's so lame. I said, this. Anyway, the party's due to start at 6 o'clock. All right. At 5 to 6, there's a knock at the door and there's 2 uniformed police officers there. The twins are going ballistic. As Chris said, this is social suicide. What have you done to us? You've just ruined it before. Go and open up the door very tentatively and say, officers. They said, oh, listen, we're just here to wish the boys happy birthday. Thank you so much for registering with us. Here's our card. Anything goes wrong, give us a call. We're going to be there for you. All right?
I did a very similar thing.
That was, it was a proud parenting moment.
It was.
All right, yep. Proud parenting moment. These conversations, what I can and what we need to be getting through to parents is that you need to be playing your part. This is a partnership with the school.
100%.
And the school can only do so much. They can, the teachers, they can control what's happening within their school boundary.
As much as they can.
As much as they can. But to be able to, what we know, is a lot of the issues that are impacting on that school environment are going to be issues that are happening at night.
Correct.
They're going to be what's being exchanged on text messages, etc. Those text messages are then going to come into what's happening in the school playground the next day, and then the teacher's going to have to deal with it. So the only way that teachers can make a difference here is if they have got buy-in from the parents, and the parents need to be stepping up.
Well, that brings me to what happened over the news in the last 48 hours, and I think to validate this into context. So schools are often chastised by parents and the media when they take pretty hardcore lines or positions on violence, deep fakes, sexual assaults, or threatening behaviour. And the school, often parents will say, give our children a second chance, they're children, or, we don't think it's fair. And I understand that, because as a parent, I suppose what comes is that your heart leads your decisions as opposed to your head. They come from a heart position. They want to protect the child. They don't want that child not to be isolated in any way. But the reality is, if they don't learn a lesson early, they can go on to think that, well, I got away with it once, or really there's no real repercussions to my behaviour, and they can go on to do worse and more, as you said, impacting in terms of career and life. So we saw on the news in the last 48 hours that there was that incident in a school here in Sydney where a young boy was, videotaped being assaulted physically and verbally. I think there was over 50 kids that were recorded in that video. Most of them either yelling abuse or hitting. Some of them just recording. When I say just recording, but recording to share. And the reason it became public knowledge is because obviously once that gets out there, someone has decided to report it and say that it's wrong. The boy ended up in hospital with bruising and so physical bruising, but also I think I can't even imagine the emotional impact that's had on that child. And of reading the comments are always the best for me because I think it's an indicator, a temperature point of our society of where our tolerance lies. And we get this, that's wrong. There's a fair proportion of people that say that's wrong. Then there's a proportion of parents and adults that were saying things like the school shouldn't expel those kids. It happened outside of the school. So you don't get to double punish. If the police are looking after it, that school should not expel. Now I'm going to be controversial here,
Yeah.
And I'm going to say no, because the school has a policy or a value that it projects. Every school has a mission statement or a value statement. Most of schools will have respect or community as the core of their values. Most schools, all schools, have community, respect as the core values. So now you've got these children who are openly disrespectful and not building a sense of community and safeness in that community. Why would I allow you to be part of my school?
Rose, that's not controversial. Rose, every school, every employer in the land has a code of conduct. And the code of conduct for a school says your behaviour, both during and outside of school hours, will not be inconsistent with the school's values. In a workforce, it talks about your conduct, both during and outside of work hours, will not bring the employer into disrepute. So again, we're preparing children for life after school.
Yeah.
All right? That's what a general expectation is. So if you've got a situation whereby, and again, that the use of mobile phones and what people are doing with their mobile phones, there's a huge education piece that needs to be done on that.
People just get out their phones.
They do, and they do really stupid stuff with their mobile phones. That situation that you were describing before, that is subject to a police investigation. If there have been assaults that have occurred, there's going to be some pretty good evidence there because it will have been filmed, and those people are then going to be facing or could possibly be facing legal action in relation to that. But we bring it back to that other issue is, can the school deal with students and take adverse action as a result of their actions outside of school hours? 100%.
Yeah, especially if those children are in the uniform.
Yeah, but even forget about if they're not in their uniform. You know, if they're out there and they can be identified, or it comes to the attention of the school, if the school wants to, and if it is something that has brought the school into disrepute, they will take action. What I know, for instance, is if a lot of students, a lot of young people are going to be aspiring to go to university, going into residential colleges. I can tell you now, the expectation that those residential colleges have on the behaviour of their students is the highest expectation of any community out there.
And
so we get it. We better be preparing them for it.
And I'm not saying schools shouldn't be open to the concept of what I call restorative justice, which is that, allowing the children to have a chance to maybe own their actions, face their, the victim or the victim's families or the community of which they belong to. So restorative action or restorative justice is an opportunity for, instead of just being punitive in nature, and it's about education, it's about owning your actions.
Because young people are going to make mistakes.
Yeah, and I think schools are the right places for that.
Yes.
Actually, I think it was 2008, there was the Young Offenders Act was changed, and they stopped just putting kids in juvie centres straight away, and they started to do these restorative processes with the community. So if somebody went out and stole something from a shopkeeper, for example, they could bring the shopkeeper in. If the offender was willing to be part of a restorative process, they all got to speak in with the police, liaison, support officers. And it was like a step before saying, right, that's it, you're going into juvie centre or jail. And I liked it because I thought, well, maybe someone has a chance to, reconcile their behaviour. And in doing so, owning it might mean that they might never do it again. Not to say it's always been successful. We know statistically that lots of young offenders reoffend. Poverty, lack of access to, resources, a loss of hope, family violence, all those things can impact someone's life and make them, contribute to poor decision making. But that then came into schools, this concept of restorative practice or restorative justice. However, I still feel that, and this is why I said I was controversial, if I'm in a school and I think that my other children are going to be unsafe, I have an obligation to make that clear to the parents or the child. I don't know if I can put you back in the school because we've now got all these other children who are going to be vulnerable.
Hey, 100%, Rose. You like there is going to be. There's a time and place for everything. There is going to be a time in relation to restorative justice. There is also going to be some actions that just can't be, okay, we'll do restorative justice, we'll forgive, we'll put them back into that school environment. No.
Yeah.
It gets to a stage where you have to look at the safety of everybody.
Yeah. And it comes now back to parenting.
Yeah,
because if I'm the parent of that child, one of those children who either recorded the assault or was the child who caused the assault, I suppose now is a good time to say, what could I have known or, what can I access so to ensure I could have better provided guidance to my child?
Rose, let's bring it back to not only the safety of students, but also let's bring it back to the safety of the teachers. Because what we're seeing, again, largely with respect to social media, texting, those sorts of things, and now we see with the rise of AI image-based abuse, that teachers are being targeted.
Yes.
Now, for me, if someone targets a teacher, that's it. They're not in that school environment. We should be taking, like there should be what I think is teachers should
zero tolerance.
Zero tolerance when it comes to teachers, because teachers deserve to be able to go to their workplace and that workplace be free of abuse and harassment.
Yeah.
All
right.
Do
Adair, back in the 1980s and 90s, there wasn't AI, but I worked a lot in boys' schools.
Yeah.
And the boys would take cut-out pictures from porn magazines, and put it onto teachers' bodies.
Yep.
Or put the teacher's face, I should say, cut out and put it onto and then photocopy.
Yes.
Back in the days with photocopies, and then distribute those out to the other kids. Back then, we were very tough on boys that did that. And I say that because I worked in a boys' school and I can talk from the context of it actually happening. So I was not a leader at the school, but I was a female that voiced my concern and said, if it can happen to my colleague, who's to say it's not already happening for me or the other female teachers? And the principal was very good at the time. He was a brother from the Patrician Brothers charism, and he was in his 40s. He was quite innovative. And he said, no, we won't tolerate it. He said, that's correct. He said, so that young man was dealt with in the day. He was removed from the school and, his parents were pretty devastated. But it was a big thing for a boy to do that, cut out the picture, find it, photocopy, distribute it. Now, with AI...
Well, let's talk about that.
It's generated within seconds.
So, Rose, dealing with boys' schools, going to if I was to ask any teacher, right, for some reason, young men find drawing penises funny. Okay.
Yeah, there's some psychology behind it, but we won't go there.
Yeah, forget it. But whatever, if there is a dusty window, there's a fair chance there's going to be a boy that's going to come along and draw a penis. Okay. You talk to any teacher, they'll say, "Oh, far out." The amount of times that we see penises drawn on desks, particularly in boys' schools. All right. Now, if a student gets busted drawing a penis, we're probably looking at a detention, and you're probably, am I right?
Yes,
from a point of view,
and
you're
also
saying
a good conversation about
grow up,
inappropriate behaviour.
Now, what you just described before, that would have taken some ingenuity or some, wanting to create that and then put it out there. Now what happens within 13 seconds, because I've taken one for the team here because I wanted to show people how easy this was to do, that you can take a picture of somebody, you can put it into one of these apps, and within 13 seconds, you've got a nude.
Yeah.
And then once you take that nude and then you start circulating it, then we've got a really serious issue. So we brought in laws to Australia which basically say that it's up to 6 years jail. These are federal laws, up to 6 years jail for someone without a person's consent goes and creates and then distributes deepfake porn. Now, what I know is happening at the moment is people think, hey, it's pretty funny, creating these and then circulating. It'll be a bit of banter. Yeah. We'll put that out there, a bit of banter. No, it's not a bit of banter. No, it's not funny. No, this is a criminal offence. If this happens in a school environment, by the way, okay, what is going to happen in a school environment is the school's going to have a mandatory responsibility to be reporting it to the police. If they were to target a teacher, then all hell should break loose. Okay, we've seen a situation that happened down in Victoria where there was a 14-year-old boy that came along and took 50 pictures and got 50 pictures of his classmates, put it into an app and then distributed it.
Oh, I saw this, yes.
That child is now facing, I think it's around about 53 charges in relation to creating child abuse material. This is serious stuff.
It's so serious.
And Rose, again, parents are totally oblivious to this. Okay, they're sleepwalking into this. Now, we've introduced the new laws with respect to social media that is then going to place an age restriction up to 16. Do I think it's going to work? I think anything that is a chance of getting people or allowing parents another tool to be minimising the impact of social media, it's worthwhile giving it a go. However, from my perspective, there's a big issue that has been totally ignored, and that is about personal responsibility. And what I mean by that, Rose, is that if we look at the laws with respect to alcohol, if a minor was to go into a pub and they use a fake ID, all right?
Yep.
They go into the pub, all right, they get in with the fake ID, they get in there, all right, they get busted on that premises. So first of all, who's going to cop the fine? Well, it's going to be the pub that allowed it in there. It's going to be the bouncer that didn't scrutinise the ID well enough. But the child involved, there's going to be repercussions for them as well. There's going to be significant repercussions with respect to fines, etc. Now, that's about personal responsibility. In this, what we've got at the moment is that with the laws, we've said, oh, well, it's too tough trying to hold parents or children accountable for that action. So what we'll just do is we'll just allow that child to keep on going to try to get in. If they get busted getting in, well, we're then going to fine the
social media platform
that allowed them in. So to me, there's a big missing piece there. Now, what it hasn't included, and what we see happening time and time again, is where is the bullying and harassment coming from? Well, it's actually coming from the private messaging, so it is still the text, it is still the WhatsApp,
Snapchat.
Snapchat is covered by the new social media laws, but those still that direct conversation.
WhatsApp, Messenger.
Yeah, Messenger, that's not covered. All right. The other thing that's not covered is obviously what's happening on gaming. And, if we want to talk about bullying and harassment, etc., some of the stuff that is happening on gaming platforms is pretty full on,
So what I'd love to now speak about is the fact that you are channeling all of this. I know you're doing you're going into schools, you're advocating on educational platforms, LinkedIn, you're going to football clubs and sporting clubs, and I love that. But you also created a resource, and this is why I really want to now go and have a chat about this resource. It's called Better Choices, Better Futures.
So, Rose, just a little bit of context. So I mentioned earlier in the program that we were having fantastic success connecting with students, fantastic success connecting and supporting teachers, but the missing link was how do we connect with parents.
And this is so critical.
So what happened was that you'll appreciate I've been in this space for a long time, so that a number of schools approached me and they said, would you create a resource that we can provide to parents, almost like an onboarding for parents? So when they sign their child up, when they enrol their child, we'll go through and tell the child what's expected of them, but we want to have a resource which is basically an onboarding for parents. Because time and time again, what teachers were saying to me or what principals were saying to me, the first thing that would happen is we'd get the parents and the student in and we'd turn the screen around and say, this is what your child's been engaging in. The response from the parents would be, how come we didn't educate our kids on this? So what they want to be able to do is to make sure that that line is set so everybody knows what the expectations are.
Well, let me rephrase it for you, because one of the things I often talk about with teachers is if we want to have an impact on students, a collective efficacy, that's what we call it, I talk about this concept of shared values, shared language, shared practice with the teachers, right?
Yeah.
So I say everything is shared. We share out the same language, we have the same practice, and we have the shared understanding of what good teaching looks like in a classroom. Together, that means we have a collective impact and efficacy in what we do. The same could be said about parents. We need to have a shared language around what are the legal consequences and repercussions. We have to have shared practice around how we deal with it, and we have to have shared values and understanding.
Rose, 100%. There has to be a collaboration between the school.
We can't
and
be talking
the
different
parents.
languages.
So here's the thing. We are never, ever, ever going to be able to eradicate children from making poor choices.
100% we're not. No,
Okay,
that's life.
But what we can do is we can eradicate ignorance so that parents can never, ever turn around and say, I didn't know what the consequences were going to be. Yeah. We can make sure that everybody knows what the expectations are. So, yes, that line is going to be crossed from time to time. However, everybody then starts the conversation from, okay, we know where that was. What are going to be the repercussions?
But also, I think you'd almost lessen or minimise the amount of poor decisions. You're always going to have a child, boy or girl, who is going to either experiment, do or say something online, verbally to person or online, who are going to send a picture. You know, my greatest fear is that you said there was an ignorance, or you used this beautiful metaphor before, and I loved it. You talk sleepwalking. I loved when you said sleepwalking. There was a visual for me.
Yep.
And that is so true, because in some ways we're scared to wake the parent up and say, this is the reality. We're allowing them to sleepwalk through this, and we're taking the brunt as schools or as society, or the law is, in trying to deal with it. But if parents were able to have a courageous conversation, an informed conversation with their child to say, are you aware that if you do send a picture, I'm just going to put it out there, and that person passes it on, you could be seen as promoting, as you said, inappropriate or child pornography. Also, your reputation, if you're the sender of that picture, it goes wild, you can't control what happens beyond that moment, then people are going to, bring that picture back up years from now. It might haunt you.
So what my vision was in creating it was to make sure that I covered off on the big topics, which I know were social issues. So what we're going to talk about is going to be breaches of codes of conduct, all right? Both during and outside of school hours, because invariably parents have got it in their mind, okay, it's only between, 8 till 3:30 or when they go and play sport. No, okay, the codes of conduct. We're going to talk about social media. We talk about the use of mobile phones, what you can and can't do. We'll talk about AI image-based abuse.
Consent.
We'll talk about consent. We'll talk about, and really current issues with respect to consent. We'll talk about racism, casual racism, bullying, harassment, gender violence. So we break it down, 45 minutes, a parent can sit down and they can say, okay, I've got this. This allows me to have these conversations. Safe partying is going to be in there. And it's in a non-judgmental way.
Yeah,
so this is not a moral issue. This is where the line is. This is what the law says. This is what you need to be aware of as parents. and to be able to have that conversation.
It's educative, it's informative.
But Rose, that's why I'm incredibly privileged, because I get asked, or schools trust me, which are, from the high-profile independent schools, the Catholic schools, the state high schools, the Christian schools. And the reason they trust me is that when I go in there, I'm not there to preach about morals or values, because that's not what my role is.
Legal consequences.
At the end of the day, the parents rely upon the school to be instilling the good values. The school in turn relies upon the parents to be instilling those good values at home. That's not what my responsibility is. My responsibility is saying, hey, listen, this is what the law says, this is what the rules say, this is where the line is. And that's I think that is a significant...
And we all need to know that.
Yeah, that is a significant piece of the puzzle. From my perspective, that is the baseline. We can come along and we can add in empathy, we can add in all these other programs on top of that, but the baseline has to be educating people about what the law is.
And I'm going to add one more layer over it, because obviously all those years of teaching, one of the things we had to do as a leader of a school was obviously child protection. So it's mandatory in every year.
Yes.
We start the school year off, every teacher listens to a child protection, either a talk, a guest speaker come in. Most of the time we can run it ourselves if we make sure we cover all the topics accurately. The reason we do it is because we have to remind teachers of those boundaries, protecting them but also protecting the child, which, and one year I came up with the concept of the red lights, the traffic light system.
Yep.
And I said to teachers, we need to operate always in a green light. That's our operational code. We're green light people.
Yep.
We have to be, everything we do needs to be a green light. It's a go. I said, if you get into an amber, I want you to know that usually you'll know when you're in amber, because you might ask a question such as, oh, should I be doing this?
Mm.
And I said, do you think that that's right? If you have to stop and ask yourself ever, is this right, good, appropriate? You're in amber, and I want you to stop for a moment and check. Because if you get into red, that's probably an appraisal and your job's on.
Yep.
And so the teachers loved that metaphor. They said to me, we loved it because what you said to us is, for example, a child says, Miss or Sir, can I see you after class? And the teacher says, sure. And the child closes the door. If you have a gut that, the child closed the door, that's your amber moment.
Yep.
And you say to the child, stop for a moment, I've got to open the door, because it's the right thing to do, that we have a clear and open, sitting down session in terms of the homework I'm going to go over with you or the feedback I'm going to provide. And the teachers loved it. They said, right, Rose. So if we get an instance where we question something, the parents could do this the same way. Really what they should be saying is, I need to be operating with my child in a green light zone all the time. Honest and open and trusting. The moment I'm not sure of something, I need to stop and get that advice or get the information to help that child still operate in the green zone.
I love that, Rose.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think as parents, we want the schools to do that. We want the teachers to be operating in the green and educating our children to be in the green. We do that. We do that as schools. Schools do a lot, but we can't do it alone.
Mm.
Can't.
Mm.
We absolutely need our parents to be active, parenting, informed, proactive people.
Yep.
And helping the child to be in the green zone themselves. But even the children know that they're doing something. They know.
Hey, Rose, I'm incredibly privileged, because I will get calls out of the blue from parents or from schools saying, this has happened. There's a situation, right? The reason they're reaching out is because in their gut, something's not right. All right. And invariably, now I'm a paid pessimist, all right, so I'm always going to tell the worst case. It's not much fun, but we talk a bit through and say, okay, and let's not forget that with teachers, with schools, they've got mandatory reporting requirements.
100%.
And invariably what happens is parents are saying, why did you report that to the police? All right.
Because we have to.
Yeah. But the schools are saying, there's no way that I'm going to put my career, we're going to put the school's reputation at risk simply because, there was a misunderstanding. We have to be reporting that to the police. The police may, all right, look at this, and then pass it back to the school and say you can deal with it. But they're not going to take, the schools aren't going to take that risk.
No.
They will be. But parents need to understand that.
100%. And so as we wrap up today,
yes, Rose,
and we've covered a few little bits and
Rose,
pieces.
it's been so much fun. Thank you.
I wish we had more time to talk about the fact that I know we're talking about school kids and parents, and really the focus was today on this idea of how we can help young people thrive in this world and have a life that's fulfilling. And that comes with a recognition of their responsibilities, of their actions and their decisions. A key player in that are parents. Of course, schools are, of course, police and law enforcement are, and there's many other organisations that are involved in keeping our young children safe and helping them to become the good, kind humans we need in this world. But parents are, if not a key part, I would say a fundamental part of that, because, as I said, when the child is born, next to their name they write parent. There's an ongoing life responsibility.
So let's end on something incredibly positive.
Yes.
I first started in this space in 2007, educating people about safe parties, all these different issues. So I have seen generational change. I can put my hand on my heart and say this generation of young people coming through now, they are incredibly special. They are far more empathetic. They're looking out for each other. There's so much respect. There's this.
They're knowledgeable.
That they want to learn. This that they are inquisitive. They are curious. Okay, they are brilliant. All right, and I genuinely believe that if we give them the tools, if we treat them, dare I say it, like adults, if we, because they're participating in adult
if we help
behaviour,
them to understand, they can really be the person they need to be, or they can go on to
encouraging the parents to just trust the process,
so
have those tough conversations, get in there.
3 pieces of advice to finish this podcast off, particularly for parents. 3 pieces of advice.
Okay, for parents, one is going to be, don't be afraid of having the tough conversations.
Good.
All right, that's number 1. 2, be inquisitive and being curious yourself. All right, that is the part of it. And part of that is being proactive. Don't wait to be reactive.
Yeah.
All right. This third thing is that when your child does disclose, when they are honest, when they do start, don't react
in a punitive way.
Don't react with shame.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
All right, don't react with you shouldn't.
Because we know statistically a lot of children don't tell their parents stuff that's going on with them because of the fear of being shamed or the feeling of shame.
100%.
Yeah, so we need to make sure that those lines are open, that parents realise that what drives children is a deep sense of shame. And so we don't want them to feel they can't be honest to their parent.
Yeah. Remember Brene Brown said, shame hates sunlight. All right? Somehow I've probably butchered that.
No, but I love that.
Shame hates sunlight, from a point of view that what may prevent your child disclosing to you about what's happening or the text exchange may be because they're ashamed by what's going on.
They don't want a light to it. They don't want it to be seen.
And they don't want... But I would far prefer parents having that conversation around the kitchen table rather than having it behind the principal's table.
Or a police station.
Yeah.
And we end with this. So, Adair, you're going to be continuing your advocacy in various different organisations, schools and sporting clubs and corporations. Yes. You don't just do this for schools. You also go in, and we didn't get a chance to unpack this. I'll get you back to talk a little bit about social media for adults. I definitely want to do a part 2 to this because I think this is really important. But for the schools out there, I want you to know that what you're doing is an amazing job.
Thank you, Rose.
But we need to get the parents involved.
Yep.
And we could definitely use a resource, better choices, better
Rose,
futures.
But I'm also, early in the new year, I'll be in Sydney full-time. So what hopefully we'll see is working more with schools down here as well.
Excellent. So moving into my local territory.
Moving down here, Rose.
Definitely can have we should have a coffee online.
Yeah, we will, Rose, and we'll talk more about that.
Yes, definitely. Part 2, I'm going to have you back to talk a little bit about...
That's wonderful. Rose, this has just been brilliant.
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you so much for showing interest and trusting me to pass on the information.
Can't wait to share this.
Yeah, no.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been wonderful, Rose. Thank you.
And that's a wrap on another inspirational episode of UThink. Be sure to subscribe, leave us a review on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to dive a little deeper into anything we touched on today, you will find links in our show notes. And don't forget to follow us on social media at Impactify AU. Until then, see you next time.